Millionaire sets up hidden camera, catches his maid in an act that swept his whole life. The Kessler mansion was silent most days, clean, cold, expensive. Jonathan Kessler, a sharp-suited millionaire with a jawline as rigid as his schedule, ran his empire like a machine. Every second mattered. Every dollar had purpose. Feelings were distractions, and that included at home. Since the passing of his wife 2 years ago, Jonathan had buried himself in work. The only real sign of life in the house was Oliver, his 8-year-old son, pale, quiet, confined to a hospital bed set up in his room due to a rare neurological condition that made walking and playing nearly impossible. But Jonathan rarely saw him. He left early, came home late, hired the best doctors, the best therapists, the best caregivers. To him, love was providing resources. That should be enough. And then there was Grace, the maid, a quiet black woman in her early 30s who wore a simple gray and white uniform and walked the marble halls like a shadow. She was hired just to clean, nothing more. But Jonathan started noticing changes. Oliver, usually unresponsive, withdrawn, was smiling. He was eating more, sometimes humming. Jonathan dismissed it, but something gnawed at him. One night, he checked the hallway camera footage, just a quick peek, and what he saw made him stop breathing. Grace, sitting beside Oliver's bed, holding his hand, not just sitting, being there. She was brushing his hair off his forehead, telling stories, laughing. She even brought him a stuffed bear, clearly not from the house. Footage after footage showed her feeding him by hand, singing to him softly, pressing a damp cloth to his head when he had fevers. She even slept in the chair by his bed when his condition got worse. No one had told her to do any of it. Jonathan stared at the screen long after the video ended. Still, part of him refused to believe it wasn't manipulation. Why would a maid care this much? What was she trying to gain? So he did something drastic. He had a hidden camera installed in Oliver's hospital room, quiet, discreet, just above the light fixture. He told himself it was for safety, that he had the right to know what was happening in his own home. The next evening, he locked himself in his study and opened the live stream. Grace had just entered the room. Oliver lay in bed, pale and weak, clutching a pillow. Grace sat beside him and took his hand in both of hers. "I brought your favorite," she whispered, pulling out a folded napkin. "2 butter cookies. Don't tell the nurse." Oliver gave the smallest smile. "Thank you." She leaned in closer. "You're so strong, you know that? Stronger than all the superheroes in those cartoons." Oliver's lip trembled. "I miss Mommy." Grace's eyes softened. "I know, baby. I miss mine, too." Then she did something Jonathan never expected. She bent over and kissed Oliver's forehead. "I'll never let anything happen to you," she said, her voice cracking, "even if your daddy never shows up again." Jonathan's heart clenched. He didn't sleep that night. He watched every second. More footage, more nights. Grace reading to Oliver, wiping his tears, pushing back against rude nurses, even arguing with doctors to make sure he got proper care. She wasn't just a maid. She was his boy's protector, his mother in disguise. And all this time, he'd been blind to it. The final moment that broke him came on a rainy Tuesday. Oliver had a seizure. The medical staff was late to respond. But the camera showed Grace sprinting in, cradling his head, whispering, "Stay with me, baby. I've got you. I've got you." And then, when the seizure passed, she broke down crying beside the bed, clutching Oliver's hand like it was the only thing holding her to earth. That night, Jonathan stood at the hospital door. watching them. Grace didn't know he was there. She was holding Oliver's hand again, praying quietly. The boy was sleeping, safe, breathing. Jonathan, the millionaire who thought money could solve anything, had no words. He had built an empire. But this woman, the one he barely noticed sweeping the floors, she had built something far greater, a bond, a home, a reason to live. And he had seen it all, through the eye of a camera he no longer wanted. Jonathan didn't knock. He stood at the hospital room door, suit drenched from rain, unmoving. Grace sat beside Oliver, unaware of his presence, softly humming a lullaby. Her hands gently cradled the boy's, her head lowered in quiet prayer. Jonathan's fingers curled into fists. He'd spent years building a fortune, launching projects, crushing competition, winning awards. But in this room, he realized, he was the poorest man alive. He slowly stepped in. Grace looked up, startled, quickly standing, adjusting her apron. "Sir, I didn't know you were—" "Sit," he said, voice low. She hesitated, eyes searching his face. It wasn't anger in his tone. It was something she hadn't heard from him before. Something human. She sat. He looked at Oliver, sleeping peacefully despite the IV lines and machines humming beside him. The boy's breathing was soft, steady. "I watched the footage," Jonathan said flatly. Grace stiffened. "I installed a camera. I needed to know what was happening when I wasn't around." He paused. "I thought maybe someone was trying to manipulate him or me." Her lips parted. "And now?" He turned to her. "Now I'm ashamed I ever doubted you." Silence hung heavy between them. Then Grace spoke, slowly, as if her words weighed more than gold. "I didn't do any of it for you." Jonathan nodded once. "I know." Grace looked away. Her voice cracked. "My son, he was sick, in a little hospital, 5 years ago." Jonathan swallowed hard. "He was 6, she said. "Leukemia. We didn't have money for the treatments. I worked 2 jobs, still couldn't afford it. I held his hand until it went cold in mine." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. "When I met Oliver, I saw the same eyes, the same sadness. I couldn't save mine, Mr. Kessler, but I promised God if I ever had the chance again, I would give everything to protect another." Jonathan looked down. He, a man worth millions, hadn't even held his son's hand in months. It was Grace, a woman earning minimum wage, cleaning rooms, folding sheets, who had poured her soul into loving his boy. "I didn't know," he whispered. She nodded. "I never wanted you to. It was between me and him." Jonathan's voice shook. "I'm sorry." He sat down in the chair across from her. For the first time, he took his son's hand, laying his palm gently over the small fingers. Oliver stirred but didn't wake. "I thought money was enough," he said. "Private doctors, full-time nurses. I thought that made me a good father." Grace looked at him gently. "Money is what helps them survive. Love is what makes them want to." Those words stayed with him. Hours passed. The rain outside softened. The machines beeped steadily in the background. Before Grace left the room to let them rest, Jonathan stood. "I want to offer you something," he said. Her shoulders tensed. "Sir, if I've overstepped—" "No, listen." He breathed deep. "You're not our maid anymore, not to me, not to Oliver. I want you to stay as family." Grace stared at him, lips trembling. "Not because I pity you," he added, "but because I need you, and he loves you. I know it." Tears filled her eyes again. She covered her mouth. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said quietly. She nodded. "Yes." Months later, the Kessler mansion looked different, not in marble or chandeliers, in warmth. Grace no longer wore a uniform. She was just Grace. She and Jonathan often sat on the porch with Oliver, reading books or watching the sunset. And Oliver, his smile returned. His laugh filled the halls again. Jonathan became less of a CEO and more of a father, not because of any boardroom decision, but because a maid he barely noticed once held his child's hand and showed him what love really looked like. And to this day, whenever someone asks Jonathan what changed his life, he never says money. He just smiles, glances at Grace, and says, "A hidden camera." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.